So in the last class, we saw verses 54 and 55. So as you know, Krishna completed the teaching starting from verse 11 up to 53. So basically, all that needs to be known has been covered in these verses. So verse 11 was the verse where he started the teaching, and by verse number 53 he had completed all that has to be known. Now after completing that, Arjuna had a doubt, and Krishna knew definitely there will be doubts, because it is not that you listen to something and immediately you understand everything and put it into practice. So definitely, and that is the very basis of teaching. It should be the teacher gives the teaching, the student receives, then he analyzes and he gets doubts, he comes back to the teacher, raises the doubts, and then the teacher again clarifies them, and this goes on until the student is firmly convinced about the knowledge. So this is how in our teaching system it happens. Now, having given the teaching, now Arjuna, having listened to whatever Krishna had to say, he could understand some of it, because the way he asked the question also shows that to some extent he had understood, but there were still a lot of things, lot of doubts in his mind. So he started, we will read that verse where Arjuna asks this question. Arjuna uvacha sthita pragyasya ka bhasha samadhistasya keshava sthita dhiha kim prabhashet kimasita prajet kim. So Arjuna, having listened to the teaching from Krishna, had a doubt about the nature of a wise person, jnani. So he wanted to know what are the characteristics of a jnani, whether there are any physical obvious differences that you can see between a normal person and a jnani. How does he walk? How does he talk? How does he sit? Basically, he wanted to, not that he really wanted to, really thought there will be a difference, but he just wanted to know how do we identify a jnani from other person, so that we can understand how to become a jnani from that. So the next verse, Krishna starts again explaining the characteristic of a jnani. So the next verse is verse 55. Shri Bhagavan uvacha prajahati yada kaman sarvan partha manogatan atmanyevatmana tushtaha sthita pragyasta dochyate. So Krishna explains the characteristics of a jnani in this verse, which we saw in the last class. So a person who has given up all the desires as they appear in the mind, he is happy within himself. He doesn't depend on any external factors for happiness. That person is said to be a sthita prajna, or a person with firm knowledge. So how do we identify a jnani? It is possibly not, or it is not possible for us to find out whether somebody else is a jnani or not, because there is no physical difference. There cannot be any physical difference. Maybe if somebody is very calm, we may think he is a jnani, or somebody, we may feel certain characteristics are there in that person to be jnani, but only a jnani knows whether he is having that knowledge or not, whether he himself is a jnani or not. So we ourselves have to ascertain where we stand. So there are two things which are conveyed in this verse. One is how to do this self-checking, and the other one is what is the process of becoming a jnani. So what do you need to do? So that is what the motive of Arjuna's question was, to understand how do I know whether I am a jnani or not, and then if I am not one, what is the process involved to become a jnani. So like Krishna said, jnani is a one who does not depend on any external factors for happiness, because he realizes he himself is the embodiment of happiness. So why do you need to have any external dependence for happiness? And desires, as they come in the mind, the jnani is not affected by them. So how do you now understand whether you are a jnani or not? We will look at that in detail again in the next verse. And what are the steps to become a jnani? What is the process involved to become a jnani? So the first one is called Shravanam. Shravanam basically means listening. Listening or receiving the teaching from a competent teacher. So that is the first step. Shravanam, receiving the knowledge. But the right knowledge from the right source. It cannot be. So we have to ascertain the knowledge is coming from the right source. So we have to verify whoever is the teacher, what is his, whether it comes from a traditional teaching background. Because if a teacher is not coming from a traditional teaching background, there could be some problems which we may not be able to understand. So when you are coming from a traditional background, it is assumed that you are following the teaching tradition. It's not that somebody, whatever somebody says who is not a traditional teacher, we are not saying that that is right or wrong. But if you follow the teaching tradition, the chances of that going wrong are very, very minimal. The next is Mananam. So once you have received the knowledge, you have to understand it deeply. So you have to satisfy your intellect. So it should be sensible, it should be logical to your intellect, without which the knowledge will not be firm. If you always have doubts about what you listen or what you receive, then the mind again will be agitated, the mind will not be calm. So you have to make sure that the knowledge that you receive is acceptable to your intellect. So you have to, so as you gain the knowledge, it has to be processed. The knowledge is processed and any obstacles or any doubts are removed for the knowledge to become firm. And the third most important process to become a jnani, once you receive the knowledge, it's not enough. Intellectually also it may be very good. So, but unless that knowledge is transformed into, the intellectual knowledge has to be transformed into emotional, the intellectual knowledge has to be converted to emotional strength. Only then you become a jnani. That means practically it has to be applied. Intellectually you may have the knowledge, but it could be just theory. Theoretical knowledge, suppose you know the theory of swimming, so to say. You will read everything about swimming, how to get into the water, how to move your arms, how to move your legs, everything. So if somebody asks you, do you know swimming? Yes, I know everything about swimming. But when you get into the pool, that knowledge may or may not be useful to you, because the theory, when you put it into, when you actually face the situation, when you get into the water, it is not going to, it may not be of use. So we have to convert that theoretical knowledge into practical knowledge, or convert, so basically converting that IQ to EQ is what we called as nitidhyasanam. So this is the 3-stage process. So there is no other way one can become a jnani. Of course, karma yoga is the first base, because without karma yoga the mind will not be prepared. Once the mind is prepared, then the next is to go through this 3-stage process called Shravanam, Mananam and Nitidhyasanam. So the more a person does these 3 actions, the more the chances of becoming a jnani become better. So that is the characteristic of a jnani, and how to become a jnani, the process involved. Having understood that, Krishna further elaborates in the next verse, which we will read. Verse number 56. Dukkheshvanudvignamana sukheshu vigatasprihaha vitaragabhaya krodha sthitadhira muniruchyate. So, elaborating further on the characteristics of a jnani, Krishna says, a jnani is one who is not affected by any adversities. He is without any yearning for pleasures and is free from attachments, fear and anger. Such a person is a muni or a sage. And if you translate muni into English, probably the equivalent word is a sage, but it may not convey the exact meaning that is conveyed as when you say muni. In fact, the word muni means one who has the right knowledge is called as a muni. So, Here Krishna is explaining the way a jnani responds to situations. Mostly unfavorable, but also the same applies to favorable situations also. So how does a jnani handle unfavorable situations? The next question may be, once you become a jnani, do you face any unfavorable situations? The answer is of course, because the jnani cannot escape his prarabdha karma. Once you become a jnani, your accumulated karmas gets destroyed, and you also don't accumulate any further karmas, what is called as the agami karma. So the accumulated karmas called sanchita karma, they get destroyed, and the ones which are in the process, next agami karma, they also don't happen. But the one which before he became a jnani, the prarabdha karma has to exhaust itself. So the jnani, though he has attained the jnanam, the prarabdha karma cannot be destroyed. So he is bound to face unfavorable situations based on his prarabdha karma. Now how does he respond to that? He uses knowledge as a shock absorber to meet these unfavorable situations. Now, suppose there is a stretch of road which is very bad and we are traveling. So there are many types of vehicles which go on these roads. Suppose we are traveling in a basic vehicle. Definitely, if the shock absorbers are not good, we will feel the effect of that bad road. We will feel the jerks, we will feel the effect on the body. That is why when we buy a very expensive car, it is not, one can say you have a very cheaper model of car that also will take you from place X to place Y. An expensive car also is going to take you to in the same route. Then why should you have an expensive car? Basically because the ride is going to be very smooth when you buy an expensive car, because the shock absorbers and other things are much better than the ones you have in a cheaper car. So that is the basic difference. It is not that you cannot travel. So same thing, when you are a jnani, it is like traveling in an expensive car. The shock absorbers are good, so the jnani is not affected. He is able to absorb the effects of the unfavorable situation. So that is the difference between how a normal ajnani person and a jnani handle unfavorable situations. It is like I said, traveling in a basic car and traveling in a very expensive car. So that is the. Now, how does one understand the strength of mind? How do I know how strong is my mind? So there are three ways in which we can understand when we face any situation, how do we respond? So normally, if we don't have the knowledge, how we respond to situations will be how we are affected physically. Some situations people may tend to, the intensity will be so high that even your body may get affected. Like what happened to Arjuna actually when he was initially, his hand started shaking, the bow fell from his hands. So that was the intensity. Then the frequency. Earlier, how you responded to the situation. Now, suppose you get angry in a particular situation, similar situation comes you again. Now, having attained the knowledge or having started understanding about yourself, your frequency of anger comes down. Say out of 10 situations, if you were getting angry in 8 of them, now you feel you get angry only in 6 of them. That means there is a progress. Similarly, the intensity. Earlier, even your body used to feel the intensity when you face an unfavorable situation. Now, you are able to, there is a effect, but it is not so bad. You at least, okay, you are disturbed mentally, but there is no physical impact. You don't tremble, you don't feel your mouth going dry, or you don't feel your head spinning when you face an unfavorable situation. That means with the knowledge, if you started feeling the difference, now I am disturbed but it doesn't affect my body. So that means there is a progress. And the third is the recovery time. So some people earlier, any situation, it might have taken weeks to recover, or even months. Some people, the situation may even prolong for more than a year or two. Some people, those situations may affect them for a lifetime. So now you feel you are able to recover in a shorter while than before. So it used to take you a few weeks. Now it takes you a few days to recover. So looking at these parameters, judging yourself, you can understand whether the knowledge that you are imbibing has made any difference in these aspects. It is like somebody has got some chronic problem, so normally migraine or asthma. So these are diseases where there is a frequency. Some people have it every week, some people may have it in 2-3 weeks. So when you go to the doctor, he'll ask you how frequently do you get these attacks. So you may say, okay, I get it every 2 weeks, at least once in 2 weeks. So then based on this thing, the doctor gives medicine. After a few days or months, then the doctor asks you, do you have attacks? Yes, but how frequent are they? Now instead of every 2 weeks, I get it once in 4 weeks. So that means the medicine is working and your frequency of attacks is coming down. Similarly, the intensity. Earlier, the attack used to be so severe, you're not able to do any work. Now, when there is an attack, I am still able to carry on, though it's not so comfortable. I am able to do some of the things which I am supposed to do. And third one is the frequency. So suppose each attack lasted for an hour or two. Now half an hour I am able to recover. So this is how a jnani, this is how a person who wants to become a jnani can evaluate himself or herself based on these 3 factors: how frequent, how intense, and what is the recovery time. So the more you become firm in the knowledge, these three things will start reducing. So that is how, and ultimately the jnani reaches a point where he knows that these things are not going to affect him. Any unfavorable situation will not, there will be, it is not that there will be no reaction at all, the jnani, okay, whatever happens, nothing. Definitely the impact will be that, but it will be so minimal, it is like, okay, it's almost nil. So that is what is the way towards becoming a jnani. Self-assessment. So such a person, he is free from raga, basically attachments. Raga and dvesha, likes and dislikes, they come as a pair. So he is completely free from attachments, because the more the attachment to anything, it leads to fear. Because when you are insecure, you are afraid. What will happen? So everybody is afraid of death, because what will happen after death? That uncertainty, that insecurity. So everything is based on your likes and dislikes. The stronger your attachment, the more will be the fear to anything. You are very much attached to your house. Suppose you have to leave the house, there is always a fear. What will happen if I leave this house? Or what will happen if I leave my family? So all these things, so the more likes and dislikes are there, the more is the fear. And fear leads to anger, krodha. So raga, bhaya, krodha. These are the three, they all come together. They come as a package unit. Attachment leading to fear, fear leading to anger. And then there is another verse which will come in later, describing the effect of all these three. So again, a jnani is free from all these three. So when there is no attachment, there is no fear. And when there is no fear, there is no anger. Because anger is born out of fear. And fear is born out of attachment. So these three come as a package unit. So when you have one, the other two are bound to follow. So the more attachments you have, the more the fear, the more the anger. So the jnani is free from all these three. Raga, bhaya, krodha. So these three are completely absent in a jnani. So once you attain this, your mind is, that equanimity in the mind is there. So such a person is called as a muni, who has the right knowledge. A person of right knowledge is called as a muni. So all this comes out of self-ignorance. So the more one is ignorant, the more these things are going to, your fear, anger, all these things will be there. Once you start getting to know yourself, slowly these things will disappear. And once you become a jnani, all these things completely disappear. So that is what is the basic characteristic of a jnani. So Krishna is going to further elaborate about a jnani in the coming verses also, because unless we understand, so the whole purpose of studying Bhagavad Gita is to attain moksha. And to attain moksha, the only way is self-knowledge. So once you gain that self-knowledge, you become a jnani. And jnani is the one who attains moksha. So these are all the benefits of Bhagavad Gita study. So that is what Arjuna wanted to know. Basically, what is the benefit of having listened to all the talk that Krishna gave? How is it going to benefit me? So this is what all of us also need to think. What is the purpose of learning Bhagavad Gita, and what is the benefit that we are going to get? Because without understanding the benefit, none of us would want to do anything. So that is why Arjuna asked this question, and Krishna is explaining in detail about the characteristics of a jnani, which he will continue in the next following verses also, which we will see in the following classes.